I think Richard Simmons has sweating to the oldies. We're having sweating to praise and worship music, right? And nothing wrong with that. Have a seat. Let's get this started. But I want to say a couple things. Adrian and I went to Anderson, Indiana this past week, and we got to go to what's usually called our Anderson Camp Meeting, but this year it's called the Global Gathering. And we got to experience with over 4,000 people from 60 different countries worship like this. And we got a little bit of a glimpse what it's going to be like in heaven one day when there's going to be all kinds of nations, all kinds of languages coming to one, worshiping the Lord. And it was just a great experience. And what was even great about that experience too is you might think that, hitting a deer and not having your car for a while wouldn't be a bad thing, but I got to drive that Chrysler 300 all the way to Anderson and back, and then, oh shucks, I found out that there were some other things wrong with the Traverse, so I get to keep the Chrysler till Wednesday. All right. So I feel blessed. I'm trying to get Adrian to trade it in, but she's not going to do it. So we're back from that trip. I feel inspired. I love preaching to you. I love pouring out to my congregation. But, even the pastor needs to be preached at too, and he needs to be poured into also. So it was a great time for me and Adrian, and I got to see old friends and really got to sit down and probably the one sermon I would say that stuck out the most, or a couple of phrases stuck out the most. One was from a man from Russia, and he talked about this. He said that if we're going to follow Christ, then we cannot say that we're following Christ if we're going to do it alone. We're in this together. You can't call yourself a Christian until you're going to be by yourself. God has built this thing, Christianity, from community, not just being by yourself. Another thing, we had a new general director that was installed. His name is Jim Lyon, and he said something like this. He said, "Hell is not afraid of a church who talks about unity but practices division." Man, I thought that was profound. I'll say that again. Hell is not afraid of a church who talks about unity but practices division. I thought, wow, that doesn't talk about my church. Hell must be afraid of us because I feel the unity in this place. Amen? Amen. Amen. I feel the unity. Well, my sermon series for this whole summer is called Joseph, My Broseph. It's one of my favorite stories in the Old Testament, and we explored last week, right before Joseph got born, what he was involved with and how his family was. And we talked about how dysfunctional things were, and the fact that no matter how dysfunctional things are around you, God still can remember you and work something great out of it. No matter if bad decisions were made against you, or you even made some unhealthy decisions, God can still work through your life. Today, my sermon title is Dream Yes, Hate No. Dream Yes, Hate No. Starting with chapter 37 with the first verse, let's read. It should be up on the screen. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. And this is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. I want to stop this there for a second. And I love this image that right now Joseph is a teenager. And it matters to us as a congregation because most of our high school students are teenagers are at camp today. And we had 8 students go to camp this week. And I just want to give Diane a round of applause for the awesome work that she's doing for the teenagers. I know this is a little bit off the beaten path, but I wanted to make sure I do this. And also, let's give honor to Edie, too. Did you see all these kids lined up here with those flags? Let's give it honor. Make sure they can hear us over there, the Treehouse kids. And I want you to see that God does so many things through people's youth. He just doesn't speak to people who have been in the Bible forever or been a Christian forever, but He talks to young people. And if you're a young person here today, maybe this could be for you, too. But I think we can all learn from this story. He was 17, tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. And when he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. If you have your flyer, in the back of it is an outline. You can follow with me if you would like to. And first of all, I know the title of the sermon is Dream, and Dream Yes, Hate No. But I want to talk about the hate part first of all, because it's so evident in the story, and I want to explore that a little bit. And the hate and jealousy from Joseph's brothers grew from, first of all, this: Joseph being younger. Who here is the older sibling? Okay? Now, do you sometimes have a little bit of disdain for your younger brothers and sisters just for the fact they're younger than you? I know I had an older adopted sister. This is kind of crazy. My sister is actually my aunt by blood. I know. It doesn't sound like our family tree has very many branches. But my dad adopted his youngest sister so that she could be on his insurance for the military. And so I remember, I was for the firstborn, and later on she got adopted, and I can remember wanting to go explore her room. Everything seemed cool because I didn't have it in my room. And I don't know, my brother, he used to mess with my stuff, and I just would want to pound him if I even knew he was in my room. You always have to hear, how come Tim gets to do it and I don't get to do it? Or I would look and I was thinking, boy, I got beat hard for doing what he did. He's getting hugs. I don't know if that resonates with anybody who is an older sibling. But I want you to see that this hate and jealousy can brood within siblings just because of age, just because they're in different times in their lives. And it's something that we all in our humanness have to overcome, even in our Christianity. Even as children, teenagers, and adults, we all don't have an excuse to hate our brothers and sisters, but we do have things that tempt us to it. And this natural thing of being younger makes us sometimes want our younger brother or sister to be away from us, or they just seem like they're annoying. I think maybe if you're a teenager and you have like a baby brother or sister, the girls think that's kind of cute, so that might work out a little bit better. But what happens when you have these ages that are really close, there can be some animosity there. So I'm not saying this was Joseph's fault. I'm just saying it's a factor. First of all, he was younger. The next thing that I think the hate and jealousy came was because Joseph was being a snitch. Remember what happened? His brothers were out tending the flocks. And then the scripture says that Joseph came back to Jacob and gave a bad report. Oh my goodness. Who here loves a tattletale? I got to admit something. I have to have confession. When I was in children's church, the children's church leader told my mom that I was the worst tattletale in the whole children's church. I told on everybody. I wanted to make sure that the teacher knew that they were doing something wrong. Now, of course, I've grown out of that, of course. But being a snitch, what is that grunt for? Are you trying to say I haven't? My best friend there calling me out. But the thing that we hate about a snitch is a lot of times people will want to give a bad report about us or say something so that they can make themselves look better or elevate themselves. Now, I want to handle this just for a second because I know we have a trend of this bullying going on. I shouldn't say it's a trend. Bullying was always there. But I think we're trying to make some steps to resolve some of that. And I know it's hard to be a teenager because, or even maybe a child too in today's day and age, because if you see something going on wrong, you know that if you do snitch about it, you're going to get in more trouble than maybe the trouble that they're causing. Matter of fact, kids ostracizing you, kids making fun of you, kids calling you out. I know it's a tough world, and I know even in the workplace as adults, when you see people doing wrong things, how do you say it? And I would just say this. There's no way you can generalize that kind of stuff. It's a case-by-case thing. But I would ask that you would always, first of all, err on the side of mercy. And that probably the time to snitch is if somebody is going to be physically harmed. Because really you don't want to be a part of that. And I would say talk to somebody who has been around a little bit more than you. You know, especially if you're young. Talk to your grandparents. Talk to your parents. Talk to your pastor. Talk to your teachers. And try to find a safe place to where you can dialogue some of this stuff so you can make the best decision that you need to make. I'm not going to sit here and say that you need to, if something's going wrong, you need to make sure that it's wrong. I told you a story here before where I wrestled when something was going wrong, and I had to really decide what I was going to do. And so I want you to know and encourage you that I know life is tough, and sometimes you have to be the tattletale. Sometimes you have to be the one who brings light into what's going on in the darkness. But really, really check your heart when you do it. Are you doing it to promote yourself? Are you doing it just to make them look bad? Or are you doing it so that the organization or the people that you're involved with can have a better chance at doing whatever they're trying to do? Those are the things I think you need to check in your heart. So they had hate and jealousy because here's their younger brother telling their mom and dad everything that they were doing wrong or everything that maybe he made some stuff up. I don't know. We don't even know if the bad report was true. It just says that Joseph gave a bad report. And then we can know that there was hate and jealousy from Joseph's brothers because Jacob loved Joseph more. Jacob was loving Joseph more. There's this huge parental hangover, and you see it here. You have, first of all, Jacob and Esau having parents who called them favorites. And so they were used to that. Now you see Jacob doing the exact same thing his own father was doing. And I want you to know that sometimes the way that we treat our kids is how they're going to probably treat their kids. And you begin to notice that some of these bad behaviors, some of these dysfunctional things lead in over to our own child's and our own children's, our own grandchildren and children's lives. Jacob bought Joseph this awesome robe. It had all these colors. And back in that day, to have all those colors was a real magnificent thing because most clothing was drab. Most clothing didn't have bright colors. You know, it was made from animal skins and that type of stuff. So if you got silk or other dyes for colors from other lands, it was probably expensive. I mean, could you imagine being a child and your parents make you go to Payless Shoe Source and make you get some Velcro shoes, and then you got a brother who gets some Air Jordans? Oh, I'd be ready to beat up that kid. That's that natural tendency to see, well, why is he getting all these things here and you don't even consider us, and we're working hard in the field, we're working hard with the flock, we're giving everything that we have, and we love you, Dad, but for some reason you're loving him more. Parents and grandparents, you got to be careful how you love your children in the sense that, are you giving one favoritism? And I guess the easiest thing is just to have one child, I guess. That might be the easiest thing, because then there's no jealousy or anything like that. But you just have to be careful. I can remember my cousin. He was staying with my aunt and my uncle, and our aunt was our blood relative. Our uncle was married into the family, and he had parents. And so this was our aunt's mother-in-law and father-in-law. And it came Christmas time, and my aunt's mother-in-law and father-in-law was there on Christmas, and my cousin had been living there for the longest time. And they told my cousin that, because my aunt had a son, 2 sons and a daughter, they told my cousin, well, you're not our grandchild, that's why you don't have any presents. We wanted to make sure that we give our grandchildren presents. And I'm thinking, how ignoramus do you have to be to say that to a kid? I mean, you could have gone to the store and got him a $5 G.I. Joe? I mean, we should really try to make people feel welcome. I can remember my mom, when we were having Christmas Eve, and some family members were saying crashing the party, which I didn't care. They said they were crashing the party, and I remember, Mom, I need to go get them all a present because I'm feeling comfortable that we're all opening presents and they don't have one. And so, I went to Walgreens and I bought out, everything that I could to make sure that I didn't spend a whole lot of money. I probably spent $40. But man, they were impressed that we had a present for them. It's that kind of unconditional love that you give to people, and you know how we translate this love. It's not about people deserving a gift, but if you're going to sit there and do wonderful things for people and then make other people feel left out, why would you even give gifts to people? That's hurtful. And if you're not aware of it, maybe you should be aware of it. You and I should be aware of it. There was a family that when I was youth pastor at Rock Springs, and some of you know Junie Longbonds. I don't know if you know her or not. And I used to love going to her house for Christmas because not only would she was awesome at Christmas. You would go to her house, and I mean there's a whole town of Christmas, and I mean they put the Griswolds to shame, just how they decorated her house. And one thing I was impressed by her was that not only did she buy presents for her kids, she would wrap presents for guests in case they came to her house. She was a lot more organized than me. She already had them ready, I had to go to Walgreens real quick. I was always impressed with that about her because I remember they were opening presents and she says, "Here, Mom, I got a present for you." I said, "Oh, you're thinking about me, Judy?" And she's laughing. She says, "Well, I have presents for guests, but I want you to know this is for you." I thought that was awesome. She was thinking about me even before I was being thought of. Isn't that awesome love? Just in case. It's that wonderful act of grace. And so Jacob proved to his sons that he loved Joseph more. See, that wasn't Joseph's fault. That was Jacob's fault. That was Jacob's fault that he would rather show Joseph all this love. And why did he show Joseph all this love? Because he loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. You see, not only had he tricked Esau out of the birthright, not only did he have some bad parenting skills from his own father and mother, but also he was this trickster and he had also been tricked by his father-in-law because remember, he wanted Rachel, but his father-in-law tricked him to have Leah. And the word says she was pretty ugly, And so now here he has his ugly wife. I'm just saying that's what the scripture says. So please don't throw tomatoes at me. But, I mean, you had to tie a T-bone around her neck so the dog would play with her, right? And she was just ugly. And Rachel, oh man, she was beautiful. And I'm sure she had the curves and all that kind of stuff. And so here is Jacob, because he loves Rachel more, rather than the situation he got himself, and him forgetting that he tricked other people. You reap what you sow. He got tricked himself, and now it's not his job to punish all the other brothers just because he didn't get what he wanted in the first place. You see how this dysfunction just goes through this whole story. And he says, "Here, Joseph, here's this coat. Everybody else, you get nothing." I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. We'll talk about the coat. That's why hate and jealousy grew from Joseph's brothers. And the last thing is that Joseph was telling them he would reign over them. He had two dreams. One dream, his brothers' sheaves of grain bowed to him. And the other dream, sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed to him. And that angered him. But could you imagine this scenario? An older brother and a younger brother. And the older brother is babysitting the younger brother. And the younger brother says, "I don't care what mom and dad say, I'm in charge." What if, and this is pretty sad, what if one of your grandkids told you, "I don't care, Mom, Grandma, and Grandpa, how much you know I'm in charge"? Oh, please would someone slap that kid. Please. Oh, please. That's what I don't get about in society today. It's like people get embarrassed about spanking their kids. And I can remember my mom, she had no shame in spanking me right there in the grocery store. If you know my mom, she's quiet and she's meek and she's not very loud, but she'd put a whooping on me. So my dad. And I remember someone, I was at the convention this past week, and an old college buddy of mine, he had his son who's probably 10 years old, and he's acting crazy and goofy. He said, "Son, if you don't quit it, I'm going to spank you right here in front of everybody." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh man, I'm sorry." I said, "No, it sounds good to me, you know." Why do we get ashamed of this kind of stuff? This is politically correct things. I mean, I'm not talking about you need to leave bruises and leave the kid beating, but you know what? You don't have the right to act like you own everything and you're in control. And here's Joseph telling him, "You're going to bow down to me. I'm going to reign over you. I'm going to be in charge of you." Well, you can kind of see, I'm not saying that they have the right to be mad, but he sure gave them a whole lot of temptation to do it, didn't he? And I would think as Christians that we would be on the side of trying to de-escalate things rather than escalate them. But obviously Joseph was part of it. Matter of fact, it's funny how you read this over and over again. And while I was reading it on the screen, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed in my studying. It was in verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to the dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, and while your sheaves gathered around and bowed to mine." And he was seeing how much they hated him and how much they didn't like him, but yet he was still talking that type of stuff. Joseph knew there was tension, but yet he was throwing fuel to the fire. He was using the dream that God had gave him not as something positive, but as something of kind of just pouring salt into the wound. Not only can I tell mom and dad whatever I want to tell them, they're going to believe me. Not only do I have this awesome gear, I have this awesome robe, and you don't have it. You know what else? You're going to bow to this guy in this robe one day. See, God didn't give him his dream to brag. And Joseph was doing some bragging in this dream. So, now we can see why Joseph's brothers were so angry with him and why they were hating on him so much. The next part I want to talk about is dreaming big. Dreaming big and saying yes to dreams. And the first thing is this. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I have. God can speak through dreams. Now, I'm not saying He speaks through every dream, but God can speak through dreams. Even this morning, my wife woke me up and told me she had an awesome dream. And she thought she had seen a celebrity, and she thought it was a celebrity's wife. And who was that celebrity, Adrian? Oh, was it Michael Bolton? I don't know why she saw Michael Bolton. And she told me how she was trying to go and get this autograph, and she kept getting stopped from getting this autograph from Michael Bolton. And so I'm wondering here, is God speaking to her like Michael Bolton's all that? Because I've heard Michael Bolton's music, and I'm not a big fan. Have you ever, I don't know, you know I'm a crazy person. Have you ever, because I leave my TV on while I'm sleeping, have you ever, constructed a dream in your head that has the dialogue of what's going on the TV, but then you wake up, what was in your head was different than was in the TV? Like you made up this whole movie yourself? I probably shouldn't admit these kind of things. Dreams can be crazy, dreams can be wild, but for some reason God can speak through dreams, and God has done it time and time again. And I want you to know that it is a communication that God uses. Not only does He use prayer, not only does He use His Word, not only does He use nature, but He uses our dreams. Remember, we were made in His image. I'd like to think that God can dream. And God lives in those things. Now, I would think that if you thought that God was talking to you through a dream, that you would talk to somebody in a safe place. And that's what I want to talk about, is God can speak to us through our dreams. That we got to be really careful, who we talk to those dreams about. Because I understand what it means to have success. And people are not always cool with success. Not everybody can handle your dreams. I remember I was really successful in some ministries, and another youth pastor came up to me and he said, "I just don't understand why everything you touch turns to gold." And what he was meaning by that was that I don't understand why things work for you. Because when I look at you and how I think of you and I think of what God has for you, you shouldn't be doing these types of things. And here's what I can say. I can agree with this guy. Yeah, because I wonder why sometimes too. But here's what I found out. That when God is in it, He wins it. And if God's got His hand on a man or a woman, great things happen. The old preacher told me that if you see a turtle on a fence post, you know he didn't get there by himself. You know that turtle did not jump up on that fence post. Somebody placed him up there. You're looking at that turtle right now. God's taking me somewhere. God's taking you and I somewhere. And we have to be really careful who we share our dreams with. Because here's your next line. Dreams don't have to be announced in the early stage. Just because God gives you a dream doesn't mean you have to talk about it. Oh, it's tough though, isn't it? It's like having some juicy gossip, isn't it? You just want to tell somebody. You don't have to announce it to the whole world if God's doing something, or if God's getting ready to do something, or God's giving you something. There's a timing for everything. Because even in Joseph's dysfunctionality, God was giving him truth. But he wasn't handling the truth in the right way. He was using it as a weapon, but not as glory to God. Isn't that amazing that the Bible can be used as something positive and negative? Use it to, the sword was not meant to chop people's heads off. The sword was meant to go through skin, bone, and marrow to the spirit of the man and the woman. Yet we use the things of God to chop people's heads off. It didn't have to be announced that early. Joseph could have held it within him. And I found that interesting. Maybe his father was a safer place than his brothers. Because his father did rebuke him, but later on in the story, it talks about how Joseph's brothers hated him, but his father kind of pondered on it for a minute. Because his dad loved him so much, he could see that Joseph was going to be great. And so he chewed on it for a little bit. I've got a mentor that I go to. I'm not going to say this person's name, but I go to this person for everything. And every one of us should have somebody like this. Here's the problem that we do. There is nothing wrong with being kind and having friends to go eat with, have fun with, whatever. But you really should only have one or two people, maybe three, that you can tell everything about your soul. Because you don't want to put so many things out there that people then have all of your business. I'm not asking you to be guarded. You got to release it somewhere, but you got to find that person, that man or that woman that you can confide in, that you can tell your deepest dreams, that you can tell your deepest hurts, that you can tell them. Because I love going to this guy, and I go to him and I tell him about the things that are happening, and I know that when I talk about success, he doesn't get jealous. When I talk about success, he doesn't think, man, why does everything till you touch turn to gold? When I give him success, he says, man, you're an expert, and man, you're doing great things. And he builds up my confidence, and he reminds me that I'm a child of God. And we all need that. We all need a cheerleader in our corner. We don't need someone that constantly beats us down. But you can't give it to everybody. I remember when I went to Bible college, there's this guy named Leroy. And he came and sat by me, and he says, hello. I said, hi, my name's Bomba. He goes, oh, my name's Leroy. And he goes, I'm an ex-Satanist. Satanist. I don't like to tell a whole lot of people. I was like, okay, your secret's safe with me. And he went from my couch over to somebody else, and I heard him say, hey, my name is Leroy. I'm an ex-Satanist. I don't like to tell a lot of people. And I watched him go all the way across the room and say to the same person, hello, my name is Leroy. I'm an ex-Satanist. Don't like to tell a whole lot of people. I'm like, what? Something's wrong with this picture. We had a worship service that evening in the chapel, and Leroy got up in front of everybody in testimony time. I'm Leroy, and I'm ex-Satanist. I don't like to tell a lot of people. It's like he was more concerned about what he wasn't anymore rather than who he was in Christ. But he was telling everybody, even though he didn't really want to tell everybody. Obviously, he wanted to tell everybody, but he did this mental gymnastic thing to where he could just push it under like it really wasn't him. He's saying it in a humble way, but he really isn't. I'll see, he was a little weird. That's okay. But the thing is that we don't have to announce everything about us. And there's nothing wrong with if one of you do great, I'm going to celebrate it in here. I'm going to celebrate you if I know you got a promotion, or if I know you're going to get married, or if I know if you have a baby. I mean, there's nothing wrong with promoting those things in there, but it's not. But if God has given you a dream, if God has shown you something down the road, sometimes you have to keep it within yourself and just tell a few people, because not everybody can get their mind wrapped around it. I remember when I was going to leave Rock Springs as a youth pastor. So God was having me move on. It was a God thing. And I thought I was going to one town. And I went to the interview, and me and the senior pastor butted heads. And I knew it wasn't going to work. And I remember being deflated. I thought that God was calling me to this place. When I found out later, He was really calling me to move. Because Rock Springs was treating me so well, there was no reason for me to move. But I was supposed to move, and I was frustrated with this, and I went to my mentor. I was crying. I was like, what's going on here? What's wrong with them people? And he said, Parmba? I said, yes. Stop crying. Okay. He says, wow. God must have something a whole lot better. I thought, yeah, He does. And we have to have somebody like that in our life. And I was talking all these dreams that I had with him, and somebody who's not going to crush your dreams, but somebody who's going to put fertilizer on it and water it and make it grow and give it sunshine. That's the kind of person you want to have in your circle. You want to tell everything about. But see, Joseph, he announced this too early. He made it too big of a deal out of it. Remember, he used it as a weapon. He didn't use it to bring God glory. Here's another thing I found out if you want to dream big. If you want to say dream yes, that if you're a dreamer, you'll always find a naysayer. Always. Don't be surprised if you do. Don't be surprised if God has given you something and finally it's that time, someone's going to say, whoa, we don't have enough money. Or they'll say, whoa, we've never done that before. Man, if I had a quarter for every time I've heard that in my ministry. We've never done that way before. Or, you're not talented enough. Or, you're not called to ministry. Or, you have these things against you so you can't do it. There's always a naysayer when God gives somebody a dream. Now, here's the thing. I can realize that some people can be so into themselves that maybe because God gets blamed. Remember I talked about last week, God gets blamed for a lot of things. Maybe God's not telling a person a certain thing. But here's what it is. Whatever somebody's saying about God giving them a dream or doing it, let time fill it out. The apostles in Acts were having troubles with the Pharisees. And then they're talking about how these guys are turning our world upside down. And Gamaliel, he says, look it. One guy claimed to be the Messiah before, and there was another uprising, and we found out that those things didn't work. He said, let's just see how this plays out. Because we could be boxing with the arms of God. We could be wrestling with God if we're fighting these guys. Let's see how it plays out. Sometimes we as humans don't have patience to let things play out. I don't mind revealing some of my secrets. I was very careful not to call us moving here in this building a grand opening. Because I knew there would be things that we would have to work out. And things that we'd have to grow into. For a later place that we can say, ta-da, Decatur, we're here! Which we are going to do that pretty soon. But we just can't do that now because we want to be ready. There's things that we have to grow into. I think ministry in our lives don't need to be treated like a microwave, but they need to be treated like a slow cooker. Let things percolate. I mean, isn't spaghetti a lot better if it's been cooked, then on the stove, and then you put it in the refrigerator, and then all the spices come back together, and then you get it again, and then it's that much better? I mean, we're just all trying to gel. We're trying to figure things out. There's going to be mistakes that are going to be made. I'm not trying to ask for excuses for them, but I'm asking for grace because I believe that there's something bigger going on, and I ain't told you all my dreams yet. I haven't told them all to you yet. Maybe you haven't told me all your dreams yet. And if you want to say no, that's okay. Because I've been told no before. And I'm just going to keep on doing what God told me to do. See, being told no is actually a good thing. It humbles you. It makes you wrestle with it. Are you really, really listening to God? It sends you to your knees, and it makes you fast, and it makes you search the scriptures, and it makes you talk to people who have been through things you haven't been through. Being told no is actually a good thing because it grounds you a little bit. Now, I tell you what, I'm only going to allow 3 no's. After that, no more no's. Because if you get told no, it can be defeating sometimes too. But take it. If God's giving you a dream and the naysayer comes, take it as a blessing in the sense that God, is this it? Rethink it and wrestle with it. But when it comes time, even Jesus, he wrestled with the will of God in the garden, but then it came time for him to do the will of God, you got to do it. This last part's what I love. And I want to speak this into Life Builders Church of God. In that we can dream big and say yes to dreams because we are a part of God's dream team. Do you know God chose all of us? He chose Joseph for a reason. He chose the Apostle Paul. He chose all the disciples. He's chosen every single one of us for a reason. And I know when I say that word dream team, you think of like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson all being on the same team. Remember in the 80s how that was great? They just went to the Olympics and just tore everybody up. But God is awesome in this. Is when He develops His dream team, He doesn't pick the ultra stars. When God gets His dream team, you know what He does? He picks the people that have failed. He picks the turtles so that He can put them up on the fence post. That's how God works. God used the youngest brother, not the oldest brother. I should say Benjamin came on, but one of the youngest brothers. He used somebody who was not elevated, but in a lower state, and yet He gave him some amazing things to do. And you would think that God wasn't in his life sometimes, but He was there all the way long. And if we're part of God's dream team, it's not always going to go the way that we want it to go. It's going to go His way. It's going to go His way. I remember I left Marion First Church of God because I thought I was going to plant a church in Decatur, Illinois. And I guess my definition of church plant and God's definition were 2 different things. Because I feel like I'm in God's hands. Seeing the wonderful things that I got to be a part of. Again, I'm not trying to brag about this. I'm just trying to say that it doesn't always go your way. It doesn't always look like you think it's going to look. And God gives you something. It's being interpreted through your mind, and then God really shows you what it was about. And sometimes He doesn't tell you because you may refuse it, or it's going to just blow your mind. So He has to give you little tidbits and that type of thing because you're not going to understand it all the way. But you're a part of this dream team. Here's the awesome thing that you're part of this team, and I'm gonna use the coat of many colors as an analogy. The coat of many colors. It was an object of affection towards Joseph. And later on, we're going to see that it got ripped up, and it got tore up, and it got animals' blood thrown all over it. We'll talk more about that next week. But here's God's dream. Okay? That coat of many colors was for Joseph. And people despised him for it. When God gives you dreams, people will despise you for it. But remember, you're on God's team. But think of it this way. Every single one of us in this room, every single one of us that are on this earth and have ever breathed air and have ever had a soul, God has loved us all the same. We focus on the wrong thing. Well, how come Chuck can sing and I can't? How come Pastor Tim is so cute and I'm not as cute as him, All those types of things. People get jealous over or whatever. But when we look at God, God looks at us and He gives us His best. He just didn't give one person His best. He gave the whole world His best. His coat of many colors is Jesus. And every one of us get to wear it. Every single one of us. Every single one of us get the pristine uniform. Every single one of us get to look really, really great in His kingdom because Jesus died for every single one of us. And the world is going to be jealous of you because you have that coat. The world is going to be jealous of you because you're part of His dream team. The world is going to try to knock you down. You are going to do things to say, I'm not going to do it anymore. God, I'm going to live for your will. And the next day, the next moment, someone's going to call and try to bring you down. Someone's going to say, well, yeah, I know how you used to go clubbing. Oh, yeah, I know how you used to get drunk. I know how you used to do drugs. I know how you used to sleep with somebody who wasn't your spouse. And they'll throw things at you and throw things at you. Just remember this. You're on God's dream team. And people are jealous of the coat. See, the difference between Jacob and God is Jacob just reserved the coat for one person. But God, in His infinite wisdom and in His dream, He envisioned all of us. So let's dream, and let's dream well. Let's let God speak through as the Bible says, through our old men and our young men. Let's let God speak through our men and our women. Let's let God speak through people who have different bank accounts. Let's let God speak through people who have different colors of skin. Let's let God speak and the rest of us do the listening. Let's let God pour dreams into us. Because we are part of His dream team. God has chosen you. And I'm glad to be your coach. I'm glad to be your coach. Because I got so many plans for us. I'd blow your mind if we just sat down and talked about it. Stick with this. You're going to see some amazing things happen. God's church is the dream team. It's the dream team. We're all part of it.